Good day. In this day, I'm going to talk about the 3 areas you must score well if you want to pass job interviews with high-performing companies. The first one is engagement. Okay, so basically, you can be as genius as you want, but if you're not interested, if you're not genuinely interested in the type of work involved in that job description, they will not hire you. Okay, and this is much harder to fake than most candidates realize, because what happens here is not about how you speak in job interviews, or I should say how engaged you look in these job interviews, but rather about the information you present them with to qualify you as a highly engaged and motivated candidate for the role, right? I had some candidate with some outright boring interview answers, but the content, the substance, the technical details, the subject matter expertise highly recommended them exactly for that same job description. Or if you want another very simple example, would be tell me about yourself, right? A disengaged candidate will likely present themselves with their life story, with all possible examples, or even in more extreme cases, they will perform a readout of their CV. An engaged candidate will try to selectively pick only the best examples from their career that will be predictors of their success in their future role, right? Highly engaged candidates would speak about where they see themselves 5 years from now on the career ladder in the same organization, whereas slightly less engaged candidates would have a tendency to speak about their small business and how they see, their extracurricular activities playing a role in their career development, right? The second thing that you want to score well in job interviews these days would be empathy. Okay, and I know this might sound quite vague to most of you, but if I ask you about your previous interview, did you try to put yourself in your interviewer's shoes? Did you understand how that interview evolved? Did you read your interviewer during the conversation? Did you understand whether they were happy, or maybe they sent you some subtle signals during that interview? Try to course correct. Did you connect well with your interviewer during the small talk, maybe? And things like that, right? Now, if you want a specific example of how empathy and reading between the lines of interviewers pays off, look no further than Amazon's interviews. Okay, so basically Amazon has now 16 leadership principles from which they always ask you questions during their final interview rounds. And basically, if you understand what are they interested in their questions, you can give them exactly what they want, right? Now, what happens here is that these questions are nothing new, they're published online everywhere. But what happens here, some candidates prepare 6 months on their story banks and on those key principles and whatnot, and then during the job interview they're asked a question which is slightly modified from the ones they could find online. Therefore, they simply get stuck because they don't understand what principle it is. They cannot read between the lines of their interviewer's questions, and therefore, they give suboptimal answers. The same goes in any job interview with high-performing companies. If you understand why they ask you the question, you can give them exactly what they want, right? And this all starts with having a good connection, with good rapport with your interviewer, and therefore scoring well on empathy, right? And the third thing I like to talk about here would be trust. Okay, so there's a serious lack of trust in job interviews, and this has always been the case, I could say, but the issue, what's changed now, is that we're no longer living in a candidate-driven market, so therefore, the trust issue has only exacerbated. Okay, so in my experience, for example, the majority of people I work with had to use some sort of influence in their phone screening rounds so that they could convince their interviewer they're worth the risk to advance them through the process, unless you were invited for that interview in the first place, right? So how do you build trust in job interviews? Well, it's the same as with engagement. You must present yourself as someone able to build trust, ideally through your past experiences, as a predictor of success in your future role, which, by the way, happens to be the definition of behavioral interviews. I have another video on how to build trust with specific examples and types of questions you might get asked. But long story short, engagement, empathy, and trust are areas you want to score well if you want to seriously optimize your chances to pass interviews with high-performing companies. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.